Hello, welcome to the Swami Select show. I'm Swami Chaitanya.
I'm Nikki Listretto, and of course Tipu the Wonder Dog is here with us again
Hey, Tipu,
to
how
share
you doing,
insight
boy?
into the world of cannabis.
So today, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, the first thing on my list is to just ask for people to send out lots of prayers and good vibes towards Nepal, where they just had this horrendous earthquake. And I'm sure the media is not telling us how bad it really was from the reports I'm getting from personal friends that live there. So let's send lots of love to Nepal. Om Namah
See, they're all
Shivaya,
brick
Shanti.
buildings there, and they're all falling down. They're
Yeah.
unreinforced, and many of the buildings are a couple hundred years old and so on. So people there are really having a tough time. And they've had mudslides also in the monsoon. So, and you have to remember that Nepal is one of the great sources of our cannabis medicine. And Nikki and I have both lived in Nepal at various times in the past. Oh, there's sunlight right on my face here, yeah.
The light is shining.
So, but we had some amazing experiences back in those days in the early 70s because you used to be able to go to the government store and get cannabis, right? And the cannabis, would come wrapped in a corn husk. A big thing
Right.
like this, and all packed in tight. Or else you could I got the sun on my face. Or else you could buy hashish from the government store and even have a government stamp on it and so on. So it was really quite much a part of the culture, and they had even these little medicine balls that you could get. They called them goalies, and it was an edible cannabis production. And so
earthquakes are nothing new to our planet.
yeah.
Come on, we come from San Francisco.
And cannabis is nothing new to our planet, actually, either, It's one of the
Exactly.
oldest, maybe even the original medicine.
Yeah. So everything's great here. We're moving right along.
And speaking of cannabis as medicine, we have a special guest today, a man who is very much involved in the developing and bringing of CBD cannabis to California and the United States. And can you get up your chair for Wade? How are you
I'm
gonna
happy
do-
to. We'd like to introduce Wade Laughter, the wonderful man behind what's often known as Harlequin.
Thank you, Nikki. Hi, Tipu. Remember me?
Welcome, Wade.
Thanks, Swami.
Nice to
really
see you
nice
again.
to visit with you.
Oh, now Tipu's going to see Nikki.
Blessings.
So have a nice little puff here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So maybe a lot of you are familiar with this CBD rich cannabis strain called Harlequin. So maybe you can tell us how it got the name, where it came from, and how you discovered it, and so on.
I'd be glad to, Swami. Thank you for the opportunity. Back in 2004 or so, I was working with a group of friends. We had a collective called the House of David. And one of those folks was from Switzerland. And while in Switzerland, he worked for a number of years on a farm where their main interest was growing cannabis for hashish and use of it. It wasn't legal to sell, but it was legal to cultivate your own. And
So this is our mutual friend?
Lars.
Yes, okay.
A
Lars.
beautiful man,
Right.
a beautiful man. I hope you get the chance to see this someday, Lars.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I asked Lars if he could bring some seeds or have some seeds sent, was the first try
Right.
we made. And so, yeah, some seeds were sent from Switzerland that we were going to sprout out, but none of them worked, and we assumed that something happened to them in transit.
Uh-huh.
So he had to make a trip home, and he managed to get some back into the States without it being too much of a problem. And we got 2 of them to germinate.
I see.
And
Did
one
you know
of
what
them-
it was at that time? You just thought it was good to
no,
make concentrate.
It was his friend that he used to work with sent seeds of what he was growing for his
Right.
use to make hash for himself. And as a person who was interested in making hash, I wanted what I thought was probably going to be some better
Yeah,
seeds because what was available in California in those days, I was finding for the most part wasn't making sense.
Well, because the thing is that in Europe they mostly smoke hash mixed or concentrates mixed with tobacco, and hash making in the United States had yet to develop with any kind of sophistication, right? And the hash in those days tasted really kind of like wine carvings or something like that. But of course, hash making is as old as the hills, really.
Yes.
So then what happened? You got a couple to sprout and the seedlings to start.
Yeah. Anyway, there were 2 clear. They were very
This was
different
now indoor,
phenotypes.
though.
Yeah, I was working indoors in those
Right.
days. I lived in San Francisco, was growing medicine for my glaucoma. I was
Right.
really trying to sort that, and then blessings, it seems to be sorted out. I'm
Wow.
enjoying good vision at this point.
Oh,
and-
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Harlequin. There were two different phenotypes, and they were supposed to be the same seeds, but you know how that goes.
Yeah,
when you work
they're
with seeds.
sisters. They're sisters. Right, yeah.
So one of the sisters was a squat plant, and I kept the original seedling moms going and
Yeah.
worked with cuttings off of
Right,
both of
right.
them until we sorted out what they were and which one would be more suitable for our purposes. And I really liked the one that we eventually named Harlequin because it grew so well. It was a prodigious producer. It grew really well indoors. I learned that trick I talked to you about, grounding plants indoors.
Yeah, right,
That's
Oh, here,
the
let me
Harlequin.
make a note of that. That's the thing that Wade figured out. You know, the indoor, your plant is kind of isolated from the earth environment. You're in an indoor situation, cement floor, who knows what. So Wade has a brilliant idea to take a copper wire on the ground and stick one end in one plant, take it to the next plant. What'd you do, 6 plants or 3 plants?
Hooked up 4 plants
Four
of
plants.
what eventually became named Harlequin,
Yeah.
of 7. I had
Right.
7 identical plants.
So
that
4
I'd
had
grown out to
the
bigger.
ground wire and 3 didn't.
Yes.
And then the ground wire went all the way outside?
No, I just took it over to, there was a copper water pipe that I
Oh,
had
there you
installed
go.
that I knew was good to ground
Right.
in the ground.
Yeah.
And put a grounding bar out of an electrical panel
Right.
on it with clamps.
So then what
to hold
happened?
it really
What was
solid.
the result?
Oh, it was the plants that were grounded grew dramatically better.
Uh-huh.
I was used to plants indoors. If you flower them with a period of long darkness before when you change the transition
Right.
from grow to flower, if you do a period of darkness, at 2 weeks, most of the strains that I was used to working with would have flowers perhaps the size of a number 2 pencil eraser.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, Harlequin without ground. The first time I did it from small cuttings, I didn't have ground on any of them, and it was noticeably bigger. It maybe as big around as the tip of my little finger, a little bit bigger than a pencil eraser, but it was a noticeable difference, and there was lots of them. I noticed that about
And
the
then
plant
with the
right
ground?
away. Well, when I did the set with grounds, the plants, the flowers at 2 weeks were as big as my fingernail on my little finger at 2 weeks instead of a pencil eraser,
Right, right,
which is
right.
double the size. And
Right,
meantime,
right.
they were all over the plants.
So anyway,
And
they
it was a
felt
really
connected to
beautiful
the
plant.
earth in some way. It was
Well,
important.
the ones that were hooked to ground were half again the size of the ones that were not hooked to ground in identical conditions, under identical
Yeah.
lighting, identical
Same
nutrients.
strain and everything.
Everything else was the same. They were cuttings of each other.
So that
And once
eventually
we're ground-
convinced you to actually grow outside.
Well, that's why I do it now, yes. It's so much easier outside. That's part of it, because indoors you're trying to recreate nature,
Right, right.
which is a lot of work,
And in the
actually.
sun, you don't have to. It's there.
Exactly.
You gotta
Especially if you
react
grow
to
your
it, yeah.
soil. Like we
So
were
how did
talking
you find
earlier.
out the first bunch was CBD rich?
Well, that's the great part of the story. I had a number of patients who were using the medicine that I was trying to produce in those days, and I had offered it out to people because at that point I loved the plant. It was really, it was my favorite of the two, honestly.
yeah.
But almost immediately the reports I was getting back was it smells great, it looks great, and yeah, I really love the density.
But you
and the way
just
it
don't
feels.
get stoned.
Exactly,
Right.
Swami. Exactly. What's up with that?
Yeah,
I don't
right.
get stoned.
Yeah.
And actually, it was kind of a heartbreak there for a minute
Yeah, yeah,
because
right.
I was pretty heavily invested
That's what
in
we
it.
bred
and
for. We bred for high stone all the way through.
Thankfully, one of my patients was a kid who played, not a kid, he was sort of a nephew to me in those days.
A
but
young
yeah,
man.
a young man
Okay.
who had played football when he was in school, tore up his shoulder. And he said it was the best pot he'd ever smoked because his
For the-
shoulder
uh-huh.
didn't hurt.
All right.
And he
right.
said, what the hell's up with that?
Right, right.
So one of my trips over to Harborside, I took some of it over to them. They already had cuttings of it because I was so
Right.
effusive about
Right,
what a nice plant it was.
right, right.
And they sent it off for testing, and it came back, I think it was 8% CBD and 3.5%
Oh, yeah, yeah.
THC, something like that.
Right.
And in those days, there were only a couple of, you had
We had
one
one.
of the original
we had
strains.
Ganjamala, which was
Yeah.
707 or something like that, right.
But there was actually cuttings of it, live plant
And then
material.
this guy
so-
Ringo up in Humboldt, he had
Mhm.
another set too, and out of his came the Harley 2, which is a cross of Harlequin and
Sour Tsunami.
The sour
Ringo
tsunami.
had the Sour Tsunami, which was a CBD strain he found.
Right, right.
Similar thing, but I think he developed his own seeds.
Right.
I didn't develop the Harlequin seed. Really.
No, it came.
I want to be really clear about that.
Yeah.
Lars gifted it to me from his friend.
Right.
And
So
that
we really
person-
don't know who
the-
actually developed the seed.
I think it's if. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
I
right,
don't
yeah.
know. I'll say
Maybe-
that.
maybe Lars
But
would, yeah.
it's a real blessing that person made that gesture.
Right.
But
But then you, Johnny, Appleseeded it also, right? You gave away
the
cuttings.
part that I did was to, once it was recognized what it was, because there were only a couple of other strains. There was the Jamaican Lion and the Amrita, and those two fellows both have made their strains available now.
Yeah.
But in those days, really, there weren't any live
Right.
strains
Right.
of CBD
Right.
rich material. So it just made sense to me
Yeah.
to give out as much as possible that plant material. And in fact, a person who was working with the House of David collective that we had in those days is still, to this day, doing the heavy lifting on keeping those original
Harlequin.
seedling
Oh.
line moms, because
Wow.
all of the Harlequin that's out there came from that one seed.
And one
Swami.
seed, amazing.
Swami.
That's something else.
It's a miracle.
Really, it's a miracle. Well, it's a miracle plant. But
It is.
Yeah.
It's a
See,
miracle
I was
plant.
actually
I mean,
in
so many-
Switzerland like a year or so before that all started to happen, right? And I was hanging out with Lars
Yeah.
up in the mountains
Yeah.
outside of Basel, and
Yeah.
and so he was putting on these Goa Gill parties, and at one party I met Albert Hoffman.
Yes.
Up
yes,
in
yes,
the,
I
in,
knew
the,
him.
in the Swiss Alps with the Matterhorn visible in the
Yes,
distance,
yes.
and I'm dancing with Albert Hoffman in the morning and so on, and he was very much into the whole
Yeah.
being with young people and
Yeah.
smoking and so on. But
Yeah.
but see, Switzerland in those days was much more liberal.
Yes.
And
yes.
and they were smoking hash and tobacco or concentrates in
Yeah.
tobacco, and there were fields of the stuff growing, right?
Yes, exactly.
And I remember one time Lars and I are taking the train from Zurich to Basel,
Mm-hmm.
and so we got in the smoking car on the railroad,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so we're sitting in the car, and
Just
on the
like
seat
we here are
between
now.
us, on the seat between us, he puts his hash rolling
Oh, yeah,
little
yeah,
kit,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
so
yeah.
he brings out his tobacco and his hash and rolls up the cigarette, and we're smoking away in the smoking car. And the conductor comes along, and since he's a Swiss citizen, pays a little extra tax. He got a free ticket. I paid my ticket. No, da-da-da-da-da. We're in the smoking car.
No issue
Right?
about the
no
smoke.
issue at all.
Yeah.
Not even a wink or a nod or nothing. We're just there. And so it was like, wow, there's a whole other way that society deals with this. It's
Yes.
just something that's a natural thing.
Yes.
So that was really an amazing revelation, that thing, and the whole connection to.
You know, when you were visiting him in Switzerland, if you went to that big farm.
I
that
did.
he-
Well, I just saw it in the distance. The one I saw.
Yeah, he's shown me pictures. I've seen it in various books.
Right,
There's a church at the bottom of the valley, and all the way to the top of the valley, it's a cannabis field,
Right.
and you can tell they're big, beautiful, happy
Oh, right.
grounds.
And then you can hear the cowbells in the distance as
Yes,
the cows
actually,
come down the mountains.
that's
and
an
so on.
interesting part of the story
Yeah.
of Harlequin. When it was revealed that it was CBD rich, of course, we went back to where the seeds came from to try and learn what was the genetic
Yeah, right,
lineage
exactly.
of this
Right,
plant,
right.
what happened here. And it turns out that of the 4 plants that were primarily involved in the breeding of what is now known as Harlequin, the original mother plant is a Swiss landrace. That the farmers in Switzerland, you mentioned cowbells, right? They love their cows in Switzerland.
Yeah.
Turns out that if cows have gastric distress, so to speak,
Yeah.
they can take some branches of this cannabis plant that we now call Harlequin, and they feed it to the cows. They fart and do what cows do,
Right.
and feel better.
Yeah.
Cows have cannabinoid receptors just like humans do.
Oh, wow.
And meantime, the farmers tolerate it growing because the cows like it. Meantime, it turns out in California, if you let cannabis grow anywhere where deer can get to it, especially when it's in vegetative form, as you know, they'll munch on it. They
They'll
won't eat the
totally-
whole plant,
no,
but they want
like
a few
it. They
leaves.
like it.
And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that there's something really going on there about cannabinoid receptors. I mean, I think all life forms on the planet other than insects all animal life forms
Uh-huh.
have cannabinoid receptors somewhere in their bodies.
So we're genetically connected,
Mhm.
actually cellularly connected in a similarity to cannabis plants.
There's something going on
Something
there.
going on.
I
We
don't,
have-
I don't
see,
know
I don't know
what
how
it
many of
is,
you really
but
understand that we have cannabinoids in our bodies. They're called
Yeah.
inside endocannabinoids.
mhm.
And we have a certain kind primarily up in the head area
Mhm.
and another bunch in the abdomen area. And the ones that trigger the abdomen ones are much more the muscle relaxant and
Yes.
the pain, muscle
Yes.
pain relievers ones. And the other ones up in the brain are deal with concussion and post-traumatic stress, all of that sort of stuff.
Yes.
And are the mood alterators, right?
Yes, yes.
And it seems to me that anything that is a mood alterator is a palliative medicine.
One of the things I love about the way the government has tried to prohibit the use of this plant that's
Yeah.
been a medicine for thousands and thousands
Thousands
of
of
years.
years,
It's been a
yeah.
food and a
Yeah.
medicine and a fabric. They used it to make the Declaration of Independence is written on hemp paper.
Yeah, right.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
come on, here we are. But in the last 100 years, it's coming up on 100 years in another 20 or so. But yeah, they tried to make it illegal, and one of the things that happened is they tried to use science to prove that it was bad.
Right.
And look at all the things that they've learned about the human body, the nervous system.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
They
Yeah.
discovered that the cannabinoids that the plant makes, cannabis makes cannabinoids. It's one of the three places, according to Martin Lee, and I think
Yeah.
he's right. There's only three places you find cannabinoids on planet Earth. The plant that makes it, cannabis,
Mhm.
is named for cannabinoids because that's where they first Meshulam tumbled onto it here. But another place that you can find them is in mammals, humans. We make them in our body. Anandamide is one of the ones that's
Right,
been
right,
identified
right,
as
right.
being made.
That's the bliss molecule.
That is made by our bodies
Yes,
when
exactly.
things are right for us. That's a cannabinoid.
And where's the third place?
Pharmaceutical companies
Oh,
can make cannabinoids for you,
uh-huh.
and they'll give them to you like Marinol is a synthetic THC.
Okay, that
But
brings
it
me to
doesn't
another
work.
point. That
It's
brings
no
me
good
to
for
another
people
point.
that really need
Are
the
we
real
going on
medicine.
too long?
And-
Another point about the whole thing is that the
Go.
so
Yes.
well about what is really working as the medical quality in the cannabis, and to take it another way, in the in the cannabis
It's
cup,
a-
in the
it's a-
emerald cup, we
yeah,
find
yeah.
that the winner is never the one with the highest THC numbers. Never.
I think this is
The
what's
reason
going
is,
on.
and now they've said, well, they're saying, isolating, THC is the euphoric thing, and CBD is the medical thing. And what a lot of hogwash. It's the way they all work
Thank you.
together.
Thank you. It's kind of like trying to say that the only thing you get in a carrot is vitamin A.
Yeah,
Is
right.
to say that the only thing you get from cannabis is THC
Right, right.
or CBD. For
Or that
that
one
matter.
is the main and
There's-
working ingredient.
Right.
With 400
Right. Exactly.
compounds,
I think
100 cannabinoids. So what's making it all work is the combination of all the things in any individual plant. And it's all about the balance of THC and CBD. And that's why really you need to find out the plant that works for you and the combination that works for you. So anyway, we need to wrap this up. And
Strain
thank you very
specific.
much.
Thank
Strain
you,
specific,
Swami.
right?
Thank
And
you.
I really appreciate not only you coming here, but also your hand in bringing Harlequin and high CBD plants to the California dispensary system. Thank you so much.
Thank you for what you do, Swami.
Okay.
All of it.
That's a wrap.